Hello, and welcome to Friday Night Author Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Baker, and during the next hour, we'll be speaking with several very talented authors about their newly released books, what their inspiration was for creating their unique stories, and why it would be a great book to read and share with your friends and family. For a kid's book that I think is going to be really a fun read and, of course, teach a great lesson, I think this next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable is perfect. The book is called Awesome Possum Powers, Altruism by author Shannon Beers from Christian Faith Publishing. Shannon, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now tell everybody a little bit about your book.
It's about a little possum named Schuler, and he learns that he can make the world a better place by using his awesome possum power of altruism. I believe kindness is a power, and I thought that by using the large word of altruism, it gave it a superhero-sounding feel. The book is unusual for most in that it uses photography. I spent around a year and a half putting together miniature sets for the scenes, and my husband photographed them for me. I love dollhouses and dollhouse furniture, so this gave me the opportunity to create this tiny land using things that are meaningful to me. I hope the readers will be delighted by the story and the cozy little scenes.
Now, what inspired you to write this and do this book in this way?
I had a similar experience in school where I chose to give up a class honor in favor of another student. When I told my mother, she was so proud of the Christ-like behavior she felt I had exhibited. Her reaction made such an impression on me. We all have the ability to make the world a better place by being kind.
Now, if you're looking at a target audience, who's the target for this book? What kind of age range are you gearing this towards?
It's a children's picture book, but I really believe people of all ages can enjoy it because of its message of kindness and engaging pictures.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to see this book come to life on the page and to be able to share it?
Their knowledge of the publishing process was wonderful, and being able to hold this book in my hands is such a blessing. I'm so very thankful for their help in realizing this dream.
Now, are you working on anything new? Maybe another book in this, maybe turning it into a series? What do you got coming up?
Yes, I do plan on Awesome Possum Powers becoming a series. And I've already chosen character traits or powers for every letter of the alphabet. And I'm in the editing stage of the second book.
Oh, that's great. Well, we can't wait for more coming down the road. Now this book, Awesome Possum Powers, Altruism, when kids read this, and like you kind of alluded to earlier, even adults, I think, could learn a lot from this as well. But what do you hope is the most important message overall that comes across from this book?
I hope these fuzzy characters with character inspire people of all ages to be kinder to one another. And I hope that people will know that Jesus Christ loves and cherishes them so much.
Well, I think this is a great book, like you said, for people of all ages. Kids are going to learn a lot from it, and even adults could learn a lot from this as well. Of course, kindness, really something we all need to apply more in our lives, and I think people are going to get that message and so much more from this book. The book is called Awesome Possum Powers, Altruism by author Shannon Beers from Christian Faith Publishing. I encourage everyone, pick up your copy today. Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, the brick-and-mortar stores, just a few of the locations. And Shannon, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Our next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, a story and a journey that I'm really excited to find out more about. The book is called A Journey for Faith by author Katrina Lambert from Fulton Books. Katrina, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now tell everybody a little about your book.
It's about a young woman and kind of her journey for place and purpose in life, kind of overcoming a broken past and some difficulties and finding a place and a purpose and her meaning in her life.
Now, what inspired you to write this story? Where did that all kind of begin?
It was actually largely inspired from kind of my own journey, trying to figure out who I was and what I was going to pursue in my life. And so the main character, Emily, was very much inspired by coming out of high school and trying to figure out what I was going to pursue and do with my life. And writing her became very clarifying for my own personal journey of figuring out where my passion and interest lies.
Now, how was it as an author to be able to share, put a little piece of you inside of a character that you're writing about? I got to imagine that had to be probably maybe a little scary at times, or was it something that really kind of came naturally for you?
Oh, yeah, it was definitely scary, kind of putting my intimate thoughts out there, and especially touching on some more touchy issues, because it is about unwed pregnancy and some really tough issues So putting those tough issues out there, I definitely found challenging and kind of wondered how people would receive it, but very much felt like in the end it was kind of the story that I was led to share and that God was going to use it to reach people because it was real and personal.
Who's the type of person you had in mind when you wrote this as far as a target audience? Who's the person you really want to see get this book?
I wouldn't say anybody could be impacted by it, but I definitely would say my target audience would be women, especially young women, especially young ladies coming out of high school and into college and trying to just sort through the difficulties of life and trying to find a place and a purpose. So definitely young women and women in general, I think.
Now, how was it working with Fulton Books to be able to get this book published and to be able to share it?
Oh, it was really good. They were really easy to work with, really open and understanding, very good communication, very easy process, and yeah, I would definitely do it again.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if maybe this is something you'd like to do again, maybe a sequel to this, or are you working on anything new?
Yes, yeah, I am actually working on the sequel to this one, and it's called A Journey for Love, and all the characters that are in A Journey for Faith that are children are young adults in it. So, yep, I've got that one in the works.
Oh, excellent. We look forward to that. Now this book, A Journey for Faith, when people read this, what do you hope is the most important message that they get from this book and your story?
I would hope the best message they would get is that basically just that we're not alone in this journey for place and purpose, and it's a path we all have to walk.
Well, I tell you what, I think this is going to be a great book, and like you said, I think anybody who picks this up is going to get a lot from it and gain a lot from it. And I encourage everyone to do just that. Get your copy today. The book is called A Journey for Faith by author Katrina Lambert from Fulton Books. You can pick up your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Google Play, online, the brick-and-mortar stores. Those are just a handful of the locations. And Katrina, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
If you'd like a good, gripping crime story about corruption and fascinating characters, I think this next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable is going to be right up your alley. I know it is mine. The book is called The Crossing by author Ron L. Lytle and John LH Lytle from Fulton Books. John, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this book.
Like you said, it's a crime story with some police corruption and a little bit of drug cartel action along with it, but it's a neo-Western fiction book that takes place in the mid to late 1990s in and around the state of New Mexico. It involves police corruption with the Juarez drug cartel, and the governor actually turns to a longtime friend of his, Ignacio Quintana, was a retired state police officer, to aid in the investigation of the corruption. Being a newly elected governor, he feels he's the only one that he could trust to look into it. So he calls him, and Ignacio reluctantly accepts the new challenge, and he goes forward with it.
Now, where did the inspiration for this story come from?
Well, the inspiration was from my dad. He's been reading and writing since I was a very young age. You could always remember him reading and writing, and he never really finished. He would start writing something, never really finished, but all of his stories seem to center around a main character named Ignacio Quintana. And don't know why or where it came from. He just said he always liked that name. But a lot of his stories included this person. And finally, a few years ago, he came to me with a completed manuscript, almost completed. And he asked me to do some work with it. And I agreed. And, he's getting older. He's advancing in age. And I think one of his main motivations to finishing one of his books was to leave something behind for his grandchildren to remember him by. And so I think that's probably the driving force behind finally finishing something. Who
do you think is the type of reader that's really going to gravitate to this story and really enjoy it the most? Who did you kind of have in mind with this book?
Yeah, well, the target audience, obviously I'd like it to be as large as possible. But if you're someone that enjoys neo-Western type productions, even as far as a movie and television, somebody that likes the movie No Country for Old Men or the television series Breaking Bad, I think you'd really enjoy the book. The book is in itself is age appropriate for anybody in their late teens to their 60s and 70s. So I think there's something for everybody.
Now, how was it working with Fulton Books to be able to see this book published and to be able to share it like this?
Fulton Books, I have nothing but positive things to say about them and the process that they had me go through as far as getting this book published. All the representatives were very helpful and informative. The number one thing that I liked and I really respected throughout the whole process was how responsive they were to questions and how quickly they responded to any emails or voicemails that I'd leave. I had nothing but good things to say about them or their process.
Now, is there anything new coming down the line? Any more from, I know that you got this, your dad's written a lot with this Ignacio Quintana character. Are we going to see more down the road?
Yes, sir. Actually, we have another one that working on right now. It's another book with Ignacio Quintana, actually, and it's called A Drowning in the Desert. Another crime story, but it's inspired by a missing girl that was reported missing back in the late 1980s from a small community south of Albuquerque. She was never found. Still to this day, her body's never been found. No other information towards her. But at the time that she went missing, there was a serial killer rapist that was living in the El San Butte, New Mexico area. And so it's going to be sort of along the lines of incorporating those stories. But the main character, again, is going to be Ignacio Quintana. So working on that right now. I'm looking forward to hopefully finishing it in the next few months, several months maybe. Hopefully.
Oh, excellent. Well, we look forward to that. Now this book, The Crossing, when people read this, is there a message that you hope comes across from this book and this story?
I think there is a couple of messages, and they're relatively simple messages, but I would say one of the more important messages of the book is the importance of old friendships and the importance of developing new ones. Also, throughout the book, you'll see that decisions can be made throughout one's life, and there's always a price to pay, good or bad, for the decisions that you make. And so I think that becomes pretty evident going through the book, and not just with one character, but several characters. So I guess that's what it would be, friendships and decisions.
Well, I'll tell you what, this I think it'd be a great book, a captivating read, and I encourage everyone to pick up their copy. The book is called The Crossing by author Ron L. Lytle and John LH Lytle from Fulton Books. You can get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Google Play, online, as well as at the brick-and-mortar stores. Those are just a handful of the locations. And John, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, sir. You have a good one.
If you're like me, you like a good story, and you love a great story about the supernatural, and I think you've got that with this next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable. The book is called Hunted by author Sydney Peterson from Fulton Books. Sydney, thank you for being on the show.
You're welcome.
Now, tell everybody a little bit about your book.
Well, my book is about a not-so-typical love story between a human girl and a vampire boy, and I guess people are just going to read it to figure out why it's not so typical.
Now, what inspired you to write this story? Where did that all kind of begin?
Well, I actually started writing the book almost 10 years ago, so I don't really know what inspired me. I think probably just the shows that I watched, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and things like that.
If you're looking at like a target audience, who's the type of person that you had in mind when you wrote this? Who do you think is going to enjoy this the most?
Well, I feel like the target audience are probably females between the ages of 15 and 25, or anyone with a penchant for swoony teen romance, or, guys with fangs.
Now, how was it working with Fulton Books to be able to get your book published and to become an author?
Working with Fulton was actually pretty easy. They always answered my emails pretty quickly, and it was a pretty good experience, I think, but, it was my first one, so I don't really have anything to compare it to.
Well, now that you've got your first book under your belt, do you think this is something you might do again? Maybe a sequel to this? Turn it into a series, maybe?
I have actually finished a sequel, and I'm currently in the process of rewriting it, and I'm actually working on a third book and a prequel. So, yeah, I was kind of planning on turning this into a series.
Oh, excellent. Well, we've got lots more to look forward to from you down the road. Now, this book, Hunted, when people read this, is there a message you hope comes across from this story?
Not particularly. I mostly wrote it just for entertainment purposes, but there probably are some messages in there that I just haven't seen yet.
Well, I think people are going to really love this. And like I said, I love a good supernatural story. And I think this is going to be a great one for younger readers. And I think even some of us older readers, I think, will enjoy it as well. And I encourage everyone to pick up their copy today. The book is called Hunted by author Sydney Peterson from Fulton Books. You can get your copy today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Google Play, just a handful of the locations online, as well as at the brick and mortar stores. And Sydney, thank you for being being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
This next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, perfect with Mother's Day just around the corner. The book is called Thoughts and Promises for Single Mothers by author Sochel Thomas from Christian Faith Publishing. Sochel, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now tell everybody a little bit about your book.
Well, my book is an inspirational, funny, and might I say witty book. It's full of experiences that I've had over the years as a single mother, my struggles being a single mother, and my victories. There are Bible promises that I had to hold on to, that reminded me that I wasn't alone in this and that there's a Heavenly Father who loves and cared for me and my children. And it's also a really easy read, and a lot of people have been using it as a devotional.
Now, what inspired you to take this and get it published and share this with everybody? Where did the inspiration for this come from?
Well, my children and the Holy Spirit, because it kind of came to me after I had devotion. And, all the thoughts came to me, I should write a book, with things I've learned, because I have a church mom who would always advise me on how to raise the kids and concerns I had, because, there are a lot of stereotypes around being a single mother and kids being from single-parent homes. And so I've always had those concerns and what I could do better, and she would always advise me. So she was actually also one of the inspirations, because when I told her, all the ideas that kept coming to my head, she said her words were right, baby, right. And so I started writing.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to see your book come to life and to be able to have this to share?
It was amazing. Actually, Christian Faith Publishing I have been referring them to everyone because it was so easy, effortlessly. They work with you. And being a first-time publisher, I was really scared and didn't think I could do it. And they made it so easy. They were with me every step of the way. And I want to work with them again.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if maybe you had another, maybe a follow-up to this lined up, or you got anything in the works?
I do. Actually, I have several, but the one I'm trying to put out is actually a cookbook for single parents and their kids. So it's basically a cookbook, 45 minutes and under meals. So, a book where kids could actually learn to cook and help out the parents, because a lot of single parents have a lot on their plate. So, and we don't have time to sit and cook long meals. So that's the one I'm trying to get out right now.
Oh, I think that's a wonderful idea. I can't wait for that one. Now this book, Thoughts and Promises for Single Mothers, when people read this, like you said, especially single mothers, as the title would suggest, what do you hope is the most important message that comes across with this book? That
you're not alone in your concerns or your struggles, and that you have a Heavenly Father that truly cares for you and your children. And He has been and will always be there for you. So, cast all your burdens and all your cares upon Him. And also, I hope they just enjoy it, and have good laughs about the situation that we have going on.
Well, I think this is going to be a wonderful book. And as you said, as a devotional as well, I think people are going to learn a lot from this. And I think a lot of single mothers out there are going to get a lot of hope and inspiration from it. I encourage everyone to get your copy today. The book is called Thoughts and Promises for Single Mothers by author Sochel Thomas from Christian Faith Publishing. You can pick up your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, as well as at the brick and mortar stores. And Sochel, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Have you ever wished you could go back in time and relive a special event or maybe change something? Well, that's at the heart of this next book of the Friday Night Author Roundtable. The book is called Long Ago and Far Away by author Mark Pimentel from Fulton Books. So, Mark, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, tell everybody about your story.
It's basically a time travel story that revolves around a scientist actually going back in time to his youth when he was 14 years old. To relive a time in his life when he met a special girl, his first love.
Now, what inspired this story? Where did that all kind of begin?
Two things. I've been interested in time travel since, a long time ago. In 1966, there was a show that came out, a program called The Time Tunnel. A lot of people might be familiar with that. About two scientists that went back in time. They were trapped in back in time, and they bounced from time period to time period, mostly historical places and events. And I was only 7 or 8 years old when that came out, and I became very interested. And since then, I've always been interested in time travel. And also the part about the main story about going back and revisiting the first love, it's based loosely on my experience as an adolescent. So combining those two things basically came up with the story.
Yeah, that always fascinates me when authors are able to take, a piece of their own personal history and kind of interweave it in various ways into, a work of fiction. How was that as an author to be able to take a little piece of you and put it into this book?
It flowed pretty easily because, like I said, it was loosely based on my life. It did take a while to write, but it flowed better than I thought it would. It came together nicely. Like I said, I was interested in time travel anyway, and I did a little bit more research for the book from that aspect, and just reliving a brief time in my life. So it went pretty well. Now,
as far as like a target audience, who did you kind of have in mind when you wrote this, as far as who you'd like to see this book get into the hands of? It
would be for everybody. It's a wide audience. It's not because it was a young, boys' romantic time. It's not necessarily geared to that age group. It's basically for most age groups, from a young adult all the way up to, an older person. I think it can, be read by anybody and be an interesting read for anybody.
Now, how was it working with Fulton Books to be able to get this book published and to be able to share your story?
Oh, they were very good. They worked with me, very nicely. We went back and forth, getting things hammered out, and it went pretty smooth. It was a good process.
Now, have you thought about doing this again? Maybe another book along this lines with time travel or a sequel, or do you have anything new you're working on?
A lot of people have asked me that. I started a few things, but I haven't really got things going, really. If anything, it would probably be another time travel story, as I'm really interested in that. I may continue with the same character. Again, I didn't really touch on that. He's a scientist, physicist at Harvard University. He's the main character that goes back in time. So I may keep him, and he may travel to a different time and place, or I might just come up with another character. But I think it would be time travel either way.
Well, we definitely look forward to more down the road as far as, the time travel. I've always been fascinated by stories of time travel myself, so I look forward to that. Now, this book, Long Ago and Far Away, when people read this, is there a message that you hope comes across with this story?
I wasn't really writing it for that. It's just a story in itself, an adventure. It doesn't necessarily contain a message, but it is a story of, in the end, basically things will work out, and there's hope. It's just a hopeful story, but for the most part, it's just an adventure. I think it's an interesting read. It's an adventure that will take you back and make you think about things, I guess, sort of a romantic take maybe on time travel.
That's the kind of book I like, is a book that, has an adventure, it takes you out of the world you're in and puts you in somebody else's world. And I encourage everyone to pick up their copy. I think this is going to be a fascinating read. The book is called Long Ago and Far Away by author Mark Pimentel from Fulton Books. You can get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Google Play, just a few of the online sources, as well as at the brick and mortar stores. And Mark, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sometimes you hear stories of people's experience, and it's just fascinating how they even survived. And I think that's what we get with this next story on the Friday Night Author Roundtable. The book is called Life Unarmed, My Story by author Diana L. Taylor from Christian Faith Publishing. Diana, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris.
Now tell everybody a bit about your story.
Well, it's an autobiography about my life. I was electrocuted as a child, and severely electrocuted, and lost an arm and a leg, and 60% of my body was burned with third-degree burns, and the doctors told my parents to plan my funeral, I was going to die. I was too young to survive. But 50-plus years later, here I am.
Now, what inspired you to tell your story? Because I have to imagine it was probably pretty tough to go back and relive that experience. But since you came out of it for the better, did that make it easier?
No, I was teased and taunted and threatened and ridiculed growing up, with a disability, and people, even adults, had treated me badly as I got older, and I just was so full of anger and bitterness that I just wanted to get back at the world for hurting me. So I started writing to get back at people, never really thinking it would ever get published. But people that knew me said as years went on that I had such a colorful life, I need to write about it. And so that's kind of where it all began. I never dreamed in a million years it would get published, ever.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to bring this book about and to be able to share your story?
It was all God, because I had thought years after I'd written it to get it published, and I tried on my own. It didn't work, and so I put it away, and I told God, if you want this published, you put a publisher in my face and slap me upside the head so that I know that it's you doing it. And he did. It was quite a while afterwards, but he did. He got my attention in a way that it had to be him and no other. And when I contacted Christian Faith Publishing, and they were interested, and they took it and ran with it.
Who do you think is going to be your target reader for this? Who did you have in mind? Is it going to be something where whether you've gone through a situation like yours, or you have disabilities, or even if you don't, you're going to learn a lot from reading about your experience?
Yes. My kind of target sort of is people that have experienced bullying and wrong treatment for whatever the reason is. You know, it's not right. And I get angry when I hear about bullying out there in the world, because I've been there. I've experienced it, and it's not fun. And I'd like to be a part of maybe putting a stop to it, or getting other people to stand up for those less than them. So my kind of, that kind of an audience that have been through something similar that can maybe relate to what I've been through, and hopefully I can help them and inspire them to help others too.
And when people do read this book, Life Unarmed, My Story, well, what do you hope is the most important lessons they learn, or the most important message that they get from this book?
Listen to God, because when I finally turned back to my faith and listened to God, everything changed. People need to know God. They really do. And if they just listen to Him, listen to that small voice, He'll take them places they never dreamed they even wanted to go. And He'll do things for them. It's good and positive, better than the world can. So just follow your heart. Listen to God. That's what I do. It took a lot of years to get here, but I wouldn't turn back for nothing now. That's
an important message I think everyone needs to hear, and I think they're going to find that and so much more. Like you said, this touches on bullying, touches on people with disabilities, a lot to be learned from this book, and I encourage everyone to pick up a copy. The book is called Life Unarmed, My Story by author Diana L. Taylor from Christian Faith Publishing. Get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, and at the brick and mortar stores. And Diana, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris. Have a blessed day.
This next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable takes a look into the mystery talked about in Timothy 3:16. I think it's going to be an excellent book. The book is called Why the Mystery by author Carl Keller from Christian Faith Publishing. Carl, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thanks, Chris. It's good to be here today.
Now, tell everybody a little bit about your book.
Of course, this book is really an accumulation of years of study and teaching in the nation of India. And over this period of time, I've found so many young people, and just people in general of all religions and nationalities that are there, confusion over who was Jesus Christ, and is it important to know who He is? And so I've developed this teaching over the years, and I feel like at this time in biblical history, this is needed more than it ever has been before, to simply find out more clarity and understanding of who was Jesus Christ, really, who was He, and is it important to know? So that's really the essence of the book that I've written.
Now, what made you decide that you were going to take all this knowledge that you've accumulated over the years and decide to put this in a book?
I decided to put it in a book because, Chris, I've taught a lot and I've preached a lot and traveled the world, but I don't care how many audiences you have and how many opportunities to speak you have. There's nothing like writing a book as far as it being restricted. For a book can go so much further than preaching or teaching can, and there's just people that'll never hear verbally the gospel or this kind of a teaching, and to me this teaching is absolutely critical for the entire world, and so that's why I endeavored to write a book. And I just pray that it's very, very effective and will reach just as many people as possible before Jesus Christ comes again, because it is a very critical subject.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to bring this book about and to be able to share this message?
Well, I found the people there very, very congenial. They're just wonderful to work with. I really can't find a better publishing company, and particularly as far as spreading the gospel, as this group of people.
Who do you look at as your target audience for this, or is this really something that any Christian really needs to pick up and give a read?
Any Christian. This, in essence, there is a hidden truth. That's what the Bible's saying, and it's a great hidden truth. It's a great mystery. And a mystery has to be resolved. What is this hidden truth? And Jesus spoke about this, and when he was trying to hide his identity from those who were trying to destroy his ministry, and in turning around and revealing unto others the truth of this hidden mystery, he talked to the disciples, unto you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God, but to those that are without, all these things are done in parable. There are mysteries of the kingdom of God, the mystery of iniquity that works, that the deception, that needs to be revealed. And then, of course, the mystery basically of his deity. Who was Jesus Christ? Why is the doctrine of the Trinity not clearly understood today? There needs to be a clarification. It's one of the greatest of the modern-day religious dilemmas. And so this is what we're dealing with, Chris, trying to unravel some of these questions. And basically, to the whole world, Hinduism is locked into this confusion, Buddhism, Islam, all of these. Nobody really knows who the one true God is. And even in America, those that appear to know who the one true God is do not have the clarification of this. And I think this book is really very effective, and simply because the Holy Ghost, I believe, has led to reveal this truth in this end time. That some will find it, and unfortunately, many will not. But we want to do our best to try to get to those people that need this truth revealed to them.
Well, I tell you what, this is a book I think everyone needs to pick up because it's going to be very eye-opening. The book is called Why the Mystery by author Carl Keller from Christian Faith Publishing. I encourage everyone to pick up your copy today. Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, as well as at the brick and mortar stores. And Carl, thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's a great privilege.
Of course, kids of all ages, the little kids and even us adult kids, always seem to have a fascination with airplanes. And this next book kind of explains airplanes in a way we can all understand. The book is called Why Do Airplanes Have Tails, on the Friday Night Author Roundtable by author Diana Cash Lennon from Christian Faith Publishing. Diana, thank you for being on the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Now tell everybody a bit about your book.
The book is really all about airplanes. It's the inside and the outside. It's the top to the bottom. We talk about airplane styles, 2, 3, 4 wing aircraft, high wings, low wings, famous airplanes, and more. It's kind of like a little question and answer reference book for people. I try to take complicated topics and simplify them a little using illustrations, like they might, for control stick, they might hold a pen and move it around and get the feel of what a control stick does. So I try to give a sample or a little exercise for them to do to see how a concept works.
Now, what inspired this? Had you always kind of had a fascination with airplanes, or where did this all begin?
Well, it kind of began, my husband is an A&P mechanic, which is an airframe and power plant mechanic. It's aircraft mechanic, and he's a pilot, and he's a designer and builder for fun. So he'll design a plane and then start building it, and has done several home builds. So we used to go to every air show every time an air show came. So I started getting interested, and I was able to take flies in an open cockpit airplane, in an ultralight, in a helicopter. I've flown aerobatics, all because I was married to Rocky, and he introduced me all that. It's always fascinating, even for me, in my adulthood. Yeah,
I was going to say, for me, it's always, planes have always been kind of miraculous, because you take this big, heavy piece of machinery, and all of a sudden it's up in the air flying. And for me, it's always been fascinating. And I got to imagine for a lot of people is that kind of, this is really a book that's going to entertain and really inform a lot of people. Is that kind of what you had in mind? This is a book for everyone?
That is exactly what I had in mind. And, when I wrote the book, I wrote the book, which I did, and I had Rocky check me for all the technical stuff, because I didn't know all the technical stuff, but he knows it inside and out. So we are able to technologically give the correct information. So, and having both pronunciation, that's another thing this book does, is I have pronunciation next to like fuselage. When you look at it, it looks like fuselage. Well, that now they're going to know how to not only know the part of the aircraft, but know how to say it. So it was important for us to get the right information, because a lot of people have looked at it as a little reference book.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to make this book come to life and to be able to share this?
Christian Faith Publishing, I can't say enough about. They were very careful to walk you every step of the way. On the front end, they said, here's what's going to happen, here's how it's going to happen, your part is ABC, our part is CDE, And they have been, anything I've asked or needed, they've been able to answer those questions. So it's been wonderful working with them. Matter of fact, the next book's coming up. I'm going to go back to them.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Do you have anything new in the works?
I do. I'm working on, I pet sit. And so I'm working on a little series of books on the pet sitting experiences, teaching a godly characteristic at the end of each book. Hopefully they'll get a little lesson out of that. And then I am interviewing a woman who lived in England in World War II and served in the Women's Army, because that World War II history is kind of my favorite genre.
Oh, wow. Well, we look forward to those. Now this book, Why Do Airplanes Have Tails? When people read this, what do you hope is the most important thing they get from this book?
I think the most important thing that I'd like them to get is understanding of basic flight principles, because that's really what it comes down to, because any design of aircraft is going to get off the ground. I think that's the main thing, is understanding how an airplane flies. That's probably my favorite part to know anyway, because like you said, metal, wood, structured. How is this aircraft that carries 500 people up in the air, traveling from coast to coast?
They're such complicated pieces of machinery, but I think this is going to be a great book to explain in terms everyone can understand what's actually going on. The book is called Why Do Airplanes Have Tails by author Diana Cash Lennon from Christian Faith Publishing. I encourage everyone, pick up a copy today. You can do that Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, just a few of the online sources, as well as at the brick and mortar stores. And Diana, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Chris. Have a great night.
When you hear the term solo mom, there are certain connotations, but I think this next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable is really going to change how you perceive those words. The book is called Solo Mom by author Donna Sutherland from Christian Faith Publishing. Donna, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Glad to be here.
Now tell everybody a bit about this book.
Well, the book is basically about my life as a single parent, and the word solo mom, I like that because you can think of it three different ways. The word solo, S-O-L-O-W, which is like a point in your life that you feel like, I can't get out of this. It's a deep pit. Am I going to survive? And then the second step up would be solo, which means you're just alone. And some people think that's bad, but, And then the word solo, the last one is like when my son was in pilot school and he finally got to take his solo flight because he had studied and he knew what he was doing and they trusted him with this, great situation. And so I think that's what we can do with life, is take those challenges that we have and keep, going through them until, hey, we're on the solo, the flight, and we've got this. We're going to make it.
Now, what made you decide that you were going to take, all this you've experienced and these revelations that you've had into being a solo mom? What made you decide you were going to put this in a book? Well,
actually, my children encouraged me. They said, Mom, how do you know how to raise great kids? And they said, we're great kids, And so I began to take little notes for them. Actually, I took notes for them through their life because I wanted them to know, this is what you're good at, this is your weaknesses, this is your strengths, and this is why you're here on earth. But they kept encouraging me, Mom, you need to write this down. And my older son kept saying, people always ask you about how to raise kids, and they like your advice, and you always know what to say. And so they really wouldn't let me off the hook.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to see this book come about?
Actually, I'm a little computer challenged, so the first lady I had, Holly, had to help me through some of the issues of, can you put this chapter in order for me? Can you help me with the little basic things? And, they were good to walk me through simple things that other people probably already know, so they were real patient.
And if you could say there's like one overall main message that you hope gets across to the reader when they read this, what would you say that would be?
The front page of the book, and they did a great job on my page cover, and this is what I had requested. There's a lady standing by the ocean, and then underneath is the scripture, Isaiah 43:2, and that's the one about when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you sweep through the fire and will not be burned, the flames will not set you ablaze. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. So I think that's kind of what life is about through our challenges, that it's okay, just depend on God.
Well, that's a message I think everyone needs to hear, and they're going to find that and so much more in this book. The book is called Solo Mom from author Donna Sutherland from Christian Faith Publishing. I encourage everyone to pick up a copy. You can get yours today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, and at the brick and mortar stores. Those are just a few of the locations. And Donna, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you. You have a great day.
Of course, one of my favorite types of stories are adventures with mystery and fantasy, and I think we're going to get a lot of that in this next book. I'm excited to talk about this on the Friday Night Author Roundtable. The book is called Where Have All the Children Gone by author LaDonna Holloman from Christian Faith Publishing. LaDonna, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now tell everybody a bit about this story.
The book takes place in an amusement park. Michelle has taken her niece to the park for her birthday, and she goes to the restroom, and while she's gone, she comes back out. All of the children have disappeared from out of the park, and she catches up with an FBI agent who has also brought his son, and his son has disappeared from off the ride right beside him through a flash of light. And so they go on an adventure looking for the children all across the world. They go to Turkey and different places. They're looking for clues of where the children might have gone. And to no avail, they can't find them. It's always a dead end. But the girl, Nicole, who is Michelle's niece, she wakes up in a beautiful island that is just perfect. Whatever they think, it comes to pass. But later on, she finds some children asleep in a cylinder, and she's wondering what is going on. And I don't want to tell the end of the story, but
yeah, I was going to say, you don't want to give away too much, but
no.
It always fascinates me with works of fiction how the author comes up with these ideas and how the story starts. What really inspired this story for you?
Well, my husband and I are pastors, and I've always wanted to teach children and been concerned about their choice of knowing about God. In our world today, there's so much chaos, and there are so much activities going on that parents don't have time to take their children to church, so they don't have that knowledge to know to choose God or not to choose God. So that's what I want to bring forth in this book, is that God wants you to know, to teach your children about Him. Let them make that choice to love Him or to not love Him.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to see this book come to life?
Oh, it was great. They made my dream come true. They made a video that was just awesome, and the book cover is great. Very easy to work with.
Now, is this something where we might see a follow-up to this down the road, or do you have other books and stories you'd like to tell?
Yes, there is. It's a sequel. And I am working on the third one, and the girl, Nicole, is an adult in the second book. It's Journey to the Dark Island, and it tells more of what happened. Oh,
excellent. Excited to hear more about this story as it continues. Now, who do you think is going to be the target reader for this book? Who did you have in mind when you wrote this?
People that like a mystery, that like that suspense, parents. But although I've heard that some parents are afraid, they don't want to read the book because they don't want to think about their children being missing. But my target is mostly for the mystery and the fantasy idea.
And if you could say there was one overall message, the most important message of this book, what would you think that would be?
That God is real.
I'll tell you what, that is a great message and a message we all need to hear. And I think in such a way as this, where there's a lot of mystery and fantasy, I think it's just going to be a fun read with an important message that everyone, young people, adults, I think everyone's going to enjoy this book. The book is called Where Have All the Children Gone by author LaDonna Holloman from Christian Faith Publishing. Get your copy today, Amazon.com. Barnes & Noble, iTunes, those are just a few of the online sources, as well as at the brick and mortar stores. And LaDonna, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Of course, you can't turn on the television or go to the movies without seeing superheroes these days. And I, for one, am a huge fan of superhero movies, comics, TV shows, and especially books. And I'm really excited about this next book because this is a new kind of superhero, one for those of us with faith. And I'm really excited. I think everybody's going to love this. The book is called Superhuman Newman by author Jennifer Knoepp from Christian Faith Publishing. Jennifer, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. Much appreciated.
Now, tell everybody a little bit about this story and about this character, Newman.
There's not a child that doesn't have a favorite superhero. And God has blessed me with bringing us a Christian superhero. And this guy's going to fight real evil.
Now, what inspired this book?
Well, actually, it was the image of a man's face that I've seen in the moon for practically all my life. I've always known that I was supposed to do something with this image, so one day I asked God to help me help others see what I see. So he blessed my pencil, and I drew a superhero. And a few days later, I wrote the first part of the story, but the character still didn't have a name because Lunar Man was already taken. 3 days later, I'm in the think tank, as we'll call it, when God put a little scenario on my heart, and it was like this. God's talking to Newman after he has asked God to bring the astronauts back for another visit because he missed them. Up until then, Newman hadn't heard our voices, and when he heard those astronauts, he was obsessed. So God said to him, Newman, do you love the humans? And he answered, yes, God, I do. And God said, do you love them so much that you might want to be one of them? Newman said, God, I have wanted to be a human since I saw you make Adam and Eve. When they're hurting, I want to help them. And when they're having fun, I'd love to have fun with them. But God, I'd really love to be a human so that you'll love me the way that you love them. And God said, Newman, look at your name. Now take away the N and put the H in the front. It spells human. You've always been a little human, and I love you more than you'll ever know. And, well, I'll tell you what, with that, I got cold chills.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to bring this character to life in this book?
Oh, well, they made this experience pretty amazing. You know, I think every author would like the process to be shorter, but I had very little patience for that waiting thing. But they worked with me and pulled me through, especially the lady that helped me in the first stage of the process. She even encouraged me to extend the book. So thank you, Marie. It's basically made this 2 books in one.
What do you hope is the most important message that the readers get from this book?
It's so sad to think there are children out there that are in abusive situations. They really don't have anybody to talk to. You know, they can't tell anybody about what's going on in their private lives for fear of getting in trouble or getting their parents or whoever in trouble. So they're dealing with stuff on their own. And I'm praying that maybe reading this book, you know, about this character, maybe they'll find a friend in Newman and let Newman bring them to Jesus so they can learn about him, and they never have to feel alone again. They have Newman and they have Jesus.
So excited about this book, and I think everyone needs to pick up their copy for the kids and for us adult kids as well who love a good superhero story. The book is called Superhuman Newman by author Jennifer Knoepp from Christian Faith Publishing. Get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, as well as at the brick and mortar stores. Those are just a few of the locations. And Jennifer, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been fun.
Next on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, a book I believe that the reader's going to be blessed when they read this. The book is called To Believe or Not to Believe by author Robert LeGrant Mabie Sr. from Christian Faith Publishing. Robert, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now tell everybody a bit about your book.
Well, this book is primarily written for believers and non-believers who help them understand or come to a realization that God does exist. And a lot of it entails a lot of Christian apologetics that I thought were important for people to read. And that's primarily what I would like to see them do. Hopefully that'll be something that they can use and come up with more of a higher belief level.
Now, what inspired you to write this? Where did that start?
Actually, it took me a little over 2 years to put it together, but I was inspired by the Lord, actually, to put this together in the format that I did because of what I've heard throughout the time of God doesn't exist, God is dead, and all this kind of thing, that I kind of felt very moved to put something out there that I thought maybe would help just the average person.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to put this out there?
They were phenomenal. I have to really admit that they were great to me, and everything was done in a timely fashion. I was really moved by the cover that they designed. Kind of brought me to tears that I wasn't expecting it to be that beautiful.
Now, is this a situation where we might see a follow-up to this down the road, or do you have other topics you'd like to write about in the future?
I think I do have something in mind that I would like to write on. I don't know if it's going to be a type of a Christmas story or something more in tune with the Christian level of belief, that they would more so that they would be able to understand that everything that we believe in as Christians is real.
Who do you think is going to be the target reader for To Believe or Not to Believe?
Well, I'm hoping that it's targeted basically for non-believers, but surely it would help those that do believe and their faith isn't as strong as it should be. I know I went through that too, where my faith wasn't as strong as it should be years ago.
And when people read this, what do you hope is the most important message they gain from reading this book?
The most important method that they would learn from this would be that they would come to the realization that the existence of God, and that they will commit their life to Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior.
The book is called To Believe or Not to Believe by author Robert LeGrant, Mabie Sr. You can get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, just a few of the online sources, as well as at the brick-and-mortar stores. And Robert, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Friday Night Author Roundtable. We'll be back next week with another great group of talented authors to discuss their books, their process, and their accomplishments. Have a great weekend, everyone.